Welcome to the virtual towers of Binary Arcadia, where the games go on long into the night. Greetings, BArcadians, and welcome to another review. And this time, one of our organic reviews, which, if you've seen, what was the last one we did, Rich? Was it Zelda? Link's Awakening?
I think it probably was, yes.
Yeah, we're going to give it another go with Resident Evil 3 Remake on the PC, we should point out. So, Rich, do you want to kick us off and talk us through, why we bought this game, really? I suppose it was led on by Resident Evil 2, wasn't it?
Yeah, so we had an awesome weekend when Resident Evil 2 Remake came out, where us and a few of our friends played it together for a few hours over a weekend, and we absolutely loved the experience of playing the game together. We each took it in turns to have a little play. It was really, really good fun. So on the back of that, we all said with Resident Evil 3 Remake coming out, we said, well, actually, should we get this and play it together? Well, that was the plan, and obviously lockdown in the UK came about, and that meant that we had to sort of change the plan somewhat. So we came up with straight from the drawing board of a way that we could basically stream gameplay to YouTube, unlisted, that we could drop the link to our friends so that they could watch us play, and then we would have a multi-way phone call where we would all be able to, say, oh, you've missed this or you've missed that or whatever. So that was how we were able to play in a similar vein to how we played Resident Evil 2 Remake, and it seemed to work quite well.
We nearly bought it, didn't we, for the PS4, just because the ideal world, well, two of our friends have, or I should say, two of the people in our party of friends have PS4s, so then we could actually do share play. We could actually, take it in turns to play through the game. But yeah, unfortunately, a fourth member of the party doesn't have one. So for that reason, we decided we're going to go with the PC, and then I took the plunge on that basically. So it meant that I was going to play the game whole the way through, but at least seeing it and chipping in the experience, because very much with Resident Evil 2, it was very much a collaborative experience of helping each other with navigation. As you're kind of panicking through these corridors in the second game, trying to make sure you stay alive. An extra pair of eyes, an extra brain thinking about the map and where you are really is quite useful.
Absolutely. And
so that was the idea.
Inventory management, that's a big one in the old Resident Evil, so that was another way in which the people on the phone were able to help Tabs get through his playthroughs, and so we played through on a normal difficulty, which was, I don't know, Tabs, about 6 hours or something, maybe.
Yeah, I would say 5 to 6 hours. Yeah, 6 hours sounds right, actually.
And then we replayed, just me and Tabs. We basically attempted to sort of a speed run, and anyone who's been part of the channel will have seen that. We did a speed run on normal. Actually, no, tell a lie, Tabs. The first run through was on hard. No, was it? Yeah, hardcore was the first run.
Yeah, it was on hard. Yeah, is it referred to as hardcore?
I can't.
Yeah, I think it is. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I think you're right. So we'd heard basically in the run up to it that it was quite easy. Down in enemies was relatively easy, and anybody who takes a Resident Evil seriously jump up to the hardcore setting straight from the off. So we did that, played that through, and then we unlocked. Well, then comes another run through essentially, and we wanted to achieve S rank. So to do that, we dropped down to normal just to get a feel for it, to get the S rank run done. And then I've actually now started a, I think it's called Inferno.
Yes, it is, Tabs. I'm sure it is.
But then I think there's one above that, which I forget. But anyway, yeah, the one above hardcore, I've started my attempt and run through of that, which we'll come back to. This game is very much built for, secondary playthroughs and so on. Very much more than the second game.
And on those, so we did an attempted speedrun or S rank, which is an under 2 hours run on normal difficulty. That was what we were aiming for. First try, we managed a 2:02, I think it was, and we thought, okay, well, we think we're fairly confident we could do this, and we actually, on the second run through, a bit of practice in, we managed to get it down to a 1:39, which we were really pleased with. And if anyone who's seen that, both those, the hardcore playthrough at 6 odd hours and the speedish run on normal difficulty is also up on the channel if you want to see that. But yeah, so that leads us on to what's good about this game then, Tabs?
I mean, it's beautiful, isn't it? We know it's utilising, pretty much the same engine, probably modified, that was used on Resident Evil 2 Remake. We played it on the PC, and I can certainly say from, cranking up the settings on my own, it runs beautifully. The textures are stunning, the gore is visceral, it's gruesome, facial animation, really good. So technically, it's an absolute marvel, and it's very addictive to play. I would say, Rich, very addictive. But what you tell us a bit from your kind of more of the observed experience. How does it?
Well, I was just going to say on the back of you saying it's such a gorgeous looking game. Actually, frame rate's incredible. It's on the Alienware laptops, it's able to sit comfortably at a locked 60 frames. If you unlock that, it'll happily boot right up to well over 100 frames. Yeah, I mean, in that sense, it runs butter smooth, doesn't it, Tabs?
Yeah, it really does. Really does.
And then in terms of things I enjoy, I just really enjoyed the experience of it. It's very action orientated, and that gives it that sense of like necessity and speed, and you need to be quick on stuff because you're always seemingly in the action. There isn't really any points really where you're out of the action, other than obviously the save or safe rooms. So I think that was cool. Yeah, what else was good about it? I
would say we were just talking beforehand, Rich, and we can open it up. It did feel very much more like an arcade experience, didn't it? It really was. You're being shuffled down just an absolute thrill ride. Yeah, we likened it to Time Crisis back in the day.
Yeah,
that sort of.
Absolutely, and we were saying that if this was out in the arcade, you'd be shoveling pound coins at it left, right, and centre, wouldn't you?
Definitely, and it had that addictive quality, that kind of instant gratification. I have to say, for playing the game, the feel of popping a zombie's head with a critical hit, that shotgun that you wield throughout, it's just immense. It's a very satisfying experience downing enemies with all the weapons really, but yeah, that shotgun especially has got to rank up there with some of the best shotguns of all time in video games. So yeah, certainly from that sort of thrill ride arcadey experience, it absolutely sticks the landing. But Rich, do you want to take that on?
I think I think that sort of covers off the really good things about the game. Great graphics, good quality gameplay. It seems to be a well technically done game. But my biggest gripe with the game is it's too short. I get that it's a more fast-paced action game, but I don't see why it's so short. I mean, we were able to complete the game, albeit on normal difficulty, in under an hour and 40. I don't think that offers great value for money, even if that is what was at the time a third playthrough. It doesn't seem to stack up, and it certainly doesn't, for me, go on the same level as Resident Evil 2 Remake, which seemed like a good step. It was a real story that you were going through rather than like a sprint to the finish, and I think it falls down a bit for me there. I mean, I've heard other people say about should this have been a DLC for the Resident Evil 2 Remake, and you think what, the amount of content that's actually there and how short it is, you sort of see where they're coming from with that.
Yeah, I mean, just to kick off, one more good thing I'll say before we really dive into some of the negatives is that it's quite creative in parts. It kind of subverts, some of what happened in the original game. I mean, I won't spoil too many things, but certainly at the start, Rich, there's like a bit of a first-person perspective, which they kind of play with a couple of bits like that. But that's the problem. They didn't take that any further. Whilst I really appreciate that creativity and it was brave and it shows courage, I think they really should have doubled down on that, especially because, Nemesis historically, while it's got a big following, and Nemesis, the character almost stole the show, didn't he? It's all about him. I think it's still viewed as probably being the worser game, at least compared with Resident Evil 2. So they had an opportunity here to really make it better than it ever was before. And building on what you're saying, Rich, it feels like they cut corners, that they've perhaps rushed this out a bit. I mean, we know, for example, that they had this engine for Resident Evil 2, which saved them a lot of time. And that in itself meant that surely, if they'd have put anywhere near the effort they did on Resident Evil 2, they could have made this, a real standout experience, rather than, as you say, Rich, what ends up feeling a bit like a DLC. And building up on what we were saying earlier, I think, it's very much an arcadey experience, but the drawback to that means that it feels quite a two-dimensional experience as well in some ways. It doesn't have that three-dimensionality that perhaps the second one did, because of all the different strands of gameplay you've got going on. You've got the arcadey thrills, but you've also got these puzzle elements, these kind of downtime moments where you're kind of collecting your thoughts and
I mean, I think.
What do you think?
I think in that respect, you're immersed in the game really well, but you're immersed in it in almost like a military way. So you're not immersed in like it's supposed to be a survival horror game, but it more becomes like a shoot 'em up because of the way it's doing. Because that's pretty much what's going on most of the time. There's two puzzles in it that spring to mind. Really, they're the only real ones that spring to mind. One in the subway and one when you're getting the vaccine. But again, me and Tabs have just spoken about the fact that they're more trial and error type puzzles rather than thinking about what they're supposed to be, because the permutations of them are so small. I think it left a lot.
You said House of the Dead, didn't you, Rich?
Yeah,
before when we were talking.
It really has that feel, that amount of arcade where you're literally, you wave after wave of enemies and you're just moving through places that are full of enemies, and that's the game really. So I think disappointed in the amount of content here, and especially with the amount of new content, I would say. I don't put it on a par with what was quite outstanding in Resident Evil 2 Remake.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I would say it's a strange one, because after I completed this one, I really wanted to replay it. Because of that addictive quality to the gameplay, I just wanted to get back into it and just, feel the enjoyment of popping zombies and popping enemies with the weapons alone. But that's the thing. If you're going to buy this and you can see yourself only playing it through once, and you're really buying it for the kind of story, the homage to Resident Evil, then I would wait until it comes down in price, because, like Rich says, you're going to get 5-6 hours of content at best, really. This is really built for, the person who enjoys the thrills and spills, and you can almost play it like a racing game at the end, can't you? It's trying to time attack essentially each run through, and that's where you're getting that's where you're chasing your thrills on it, as opposed to it's less about an experience like Resident Evil 2 was.
Absolutely.
Which has a lot more depth to it. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I guess in summary, I would say it's a brilliant action-orientated game, but I feel like it doesn't live up to the hype of the Resident Evil 2 remake, and I feel like if you come here expecting something to blow you away and lots of new content over the original, I think you're going to be disappointed. And especially if you come here thinking, I'm going to get 15-20 hours of gameplay. Well, other than multiple playthroughs of the same thing, honing your craft within the game, I think you're going to be disappointed.
This is it, and I should point out I've not played Resistance, but that's kind of what adds insult to injury with this, because Resistance was, of course, sandwiched with it, wasn't it, Rich? It's included in the package, and if you don't know, Resistance is it's like an online multiplayer game, isn't it, Rich? Is that how you describe it?
Yeah, I would say in essence, where you can either play the sort of the zombie element of it, so you're controlling the hordes of zombies or creatures.
They call it the mastermind, I think, don't they?
That's it, yeah. So you're almost like the person who's dictating what people are going to have to deal with, or you can play as, the people trying to survive this. I'd have to say that it doesn't appeal to me a great deal. I don't know why, I don't know. I don't know how well that's been received in terms of reviews. I don't know, I've not seen any to say how well that's been critically reviewed, but it doesn't really appeal to me necessarily. I like the story elements of these types of games, and rather than that type of game where it literally is all arcade and nothing else.
Well, I was just going to say that's what sours the taste, because as we said, Resident Evil 3 Remake, it feels like a bit of a undercooked experience because it's so brief. And the salt in the wound on that is that they've actually, they've sandwiched it in with this Resistance game, which is not really what the fans, I don't think, wanted. I think we'd have preferred if they'd put all the time they spent on Resistance into Resident Evil 3 Remake to make it, a bigger, more voluminous experience, if you like. So that feels like a bit of a kick in the teeth and a bit of a shame, to be honest. And then make Resistance a standalone game. Take your time on that and make that a kind of a standalone experience with much more to go at in itself. Absolutely. So it does feel like what would you say? A stepping stone for the series, very much, and in the build up to, well, what do we think now, Rich? Is it Resident Evil 4 is going to be the next?
It does seem like Resident Evil 4 Remake will be the next one. And actually, interestingly, again, a much more action-orientated Resident Evil, albeit one of the better ones throughout the whole of the series. The original is still regarded as one of the best Resident Evils, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. And again, a much longer experience. I think it's at least 20 hours, isn't it, that one? So in some ways you could say, looking back at the original's never been held by the bulk of Resident Evil fans as the best game in the series, not by a long shot, I would say. But so therefore you could say, well, it's kind of a like-for-like remake. But without doubt, building on Resident Evil 2 Remake, which really did a lot to not just honour the original, but kind of really make it into something and bring it up to date with modern gaming, reinvent it in many ways. It seems like they've missed the boat on that one.
Absolutely.
So what would you say in summary, Rich? What would you give it out of 10, and what would you say as kind of a closing statement?
So I would say Resident Evil 3 Remake is a good remake of the original, but isn't offering great value for money in terms of the scale of the job that was done on the original. And I would say, for me, really enjoyable gameplay and addictive, as Tab says, but unfortunately, because of the shortness and the fact that the gameplay balance is not well enough balanced between action and puzzling, for me, I think I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10.
That sounds fair to me, mate. I would say for me, if you're going in with low expectations as just a hardcore Resident Evil fan, I think there's plenty there to enjoy. And like I say, if you're up for those reruns, for those secondary playthroughs, then there's plenty there to get your teeth into. But yeah, if you came into this thinking, we're going to see something comparable to Resident Evil 2 Remake, with some more depth, creativity, huge amounts of reinvention, no, you're gonna be disappointed. So for me, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10 for this one. And yeah, for the most part, perhaps wait until it comes down in price before you buy.
Excellent. So that gives a channel average of 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah, we'll take that. Yeah. 7.5, and that seems fair to me. Yeah. I'd say. So there we are, Barcadians. Resident Evil 3 Remake gets 7.5 out of 10, as voted by the Binary Arcadia Massive. Please let us know what your thoughts are in the comments. If you agreed, if you thought it was even worse than that, or perhaps if it was, it met all of your wildest dreams and you were chuffed to bits with it. We'd love to hear that, that culture of different opinion on the channel. And like the video if you haven't already, to help us grow and support the channel. Make sure you're subscribed and ring that bell for notifications. And I think that's probably about it. Another one for the archives.
Stamped and completed.